Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Movies, Music, and Moving Music. I'm here with someone that I've known for 25 years, Ken Malucelli. Ken is what you might call a Renaissance man. In fact, if you look up Renaissance man in the dictionary, I think you will see his picture.
Thank you.
Ken has been an author, a newspaper columnist, a director, an actor, a singer, a voice teacher, and I'm sure I'm leaving off plenty of other stuff. And that doesn't even get into all of his non-showbiz pursuits, which he's pretty much held almost every menial job known to man, or at least most menial jobs known to man.
Yeah, I've been around the block a few times.
Yes. Anyway, say hello to our nice viewers, Ken.
Hello, viewers. Good to see you, and thanks for tuning in.
So I first met Ken in the spring of 2001. I auditioned for a group called the Merrie Old Christmas Carolers. That's Merrie, M-E-R-R-I-E, and Olde, O-L-D-E. The Old, O-L-D-E, British spelling of it. So the Merrie Old Christmas Carolers, which is the largest professional caroling organization in the country.
In the world.
In the world,
yes.
Okay, even better. And a lot of what we use are arrangements that Ken himself made. And Ken, why don't you start talking a little bit about the beginnings of MOCC, how you did the arrangements, et cetera, et cetera.
It kind of goes back to when I was in high school, and I've always been involved in choral groups and singing a cappella, and that's why I'm wearing this shirt that says Harmony on it. But that's actually, I bought that in a town south of down Highway 1, a little bit north of the Hearst Castle. My sister and I went there, and I thought, I've got to buy a T-shirt that says Harmony on it. But I've been doing Harmony for many, many years, and two of the people who were singing with me in what was the original Merrie Old Christmas Carolers album were in an a cappella group called the Edlows, and I started managing them, and that got me into doing more a cappella groups. And then 25 years later, we did the 25th anniversary CD, and yeah, we had a lot of fun there. This is my A group. Me, Bonnie, Shelley, and Larry. Yeah, we had a great time. So we've been doing that, and this is now our 49th consecutive year, by the way.
Wow.
And
so I've been in it about half the time. I'm going into my 25th year in November or December. Yeah.
Then you are. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Okay, Larry Venza is the very old Christmas caroler. I no longer sing with the group, but Larry, having been in my A team, is still singing with the group 49 years later.
That's great. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about how the arrangements came about. Because you said, I know you were like in an original quartet, and a lot of the arrangements came out of what that quartet was doing, right?
We did. My first gig was back in 1977, I think it was. It has to be, because that's when I established the company. I got a call from Dr. Ballard, who was at that point the director of the San Francisco Boys Chorus, of which I'm a charter member, by the way. That's how I grew up on the opera chorus stage, up on the opera house stage. And Dr. Ballard said, we need a group for a friend of mine who's having a company party in Alameda. Can you put together a quartet of singers? And I said, you never say no. So I got together four of my friends, and that's where MOCC started. We just put together four people who happened to have costumes because we were all singing with other Christmas caroling groups. And what made MOCC different is I thought I didn't want to be just like any other group standing there singing Deck the Hall and Silent Night out of the standard old Christmas caroling book. So I started doing my own arrangements and adding things like kazoos, tambourines, sleigh bells, finger cymbals, throwing confetti,
slide whistle.
And all the slide whistle, that's right.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I grew up hating Christmas carols because I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
And I was sick of hearing them on the radio. It's really treacly stuff. And I would never in a million years have imagined I'd be doing a quarter century in a caroling group. But I love the arrangements.
Thank
They're
you.
fun. You know, the people are great. It's just joyous to be out there in the community. And so I've really changed my tune on Christmas carols, so to speak.
Yeah, we still have a lot of fun. And I actually sold a company to two of my carolers back in 2011, I think it was. because I had my own talent agency at that point, and it became too much of a job to do the caroling company, which is like a 9-month of a year job, by the way, and then do my own Prince SF Productions gig, which was 24 hours a day job. So they wanted to buy it. I sold it, and so it's still going. Yeah.
Yeah, and Prince SF Productions is what you did around a cappella music mostly, right?
It started out with just being about a cappella, and then what happened was we started building the company because we got getting more gigs, and I had to have more singers. So I started engaging more singers to learn the charts, and we got a gig at the Sacramento State Fair one year. Of one of the a cappella groups I was representing, the Edlos, and they liked the way I worked with them. And she said, "So can you send me your roster?" And I went, "Okay, what's a roster?" So right. I just built stuff that people who were caroling with me had sent me. Oh, I have a friend who has a band, or I have a friend who's a comic. And I started developing all these promotional packets. And so I went into this box I was saving with all this stuff, and I went, I have a talent agency, don't I? And that's how Prince SF began, and it grew from that.
And we're going to talk a little bit more later about your other a cappella experiences besides Merry Old Christmas Carolers. I do want to talk a little bit about your memoir. And what is the name of your memoir?
And then that happened.
Right, and it's got like 3 or 4 dots before "and," so like continuing a story. And what a story you've had with your life. So,
well, like I said, I've been around the block a few times.
Well, one of the things I really appreciated in looking through your memoir was what you said about how you have laughed your way through life, and it's helped you get through both. It obviously helps with the good times, but it's also helped with the bad times. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that's helped you through the bad
I would
times?
like to do that. And I'll tell you where that came from is there's a line somewhere about it's actually a line I think I made up. My motto is life is one big colossal joke. And if you can't laugh at it, you're your own worst enemy. So you need to laugh at everything, no matter how bad it is, even death. And by the way, I need to advance by just before I came here, I got a text from the wife of the guy who conducted my Sousa band. He passed away last night. So we'll come back. We'll come back to that later. But anyway, I laugh a lot because I like to laugh. I don't do stress. Stress is basically wasted black energy, and it isn't worth doing it. So you find you make your job fun. First of all, you have to make your job fun, not a job. Some people find that hard to do, but if you make games out of stuff, then you're playing at your job and you're having more of a good time. And when stuff happens that maybe is bad or lousy or crappy, well, laugh at it, because life is full of stuff like that, and you just got to laugh at it. So that's always been my philosophy.
So that leads to a question. Now, we talked about how you had a lot of different so-called menial jobs.
Yeah.
You want to talk about one that you didn't particularly like and how you kind of got through it with laughing at it or seeing it as a joke?
Oh, I got a good one.
Okay.
It was when I had graduated from high school. I got a job working as a stock clerk at a department store company called Weinstein's, which had like 7 branches around San Francisco, and I think a couple around the Bay Area. I worked on the Polk Street store, and it was me carting boxes up and down stairs all the time, and the people weren't very friendly. And I thought, even though I'm making a salary here, I really don't like this thing. So on my very planned last day, after I got my paycheck, we used to get big deliveries from trucks of big boxes of toilet paper and tissues and just all sorts of stuff. And it had to go downstairs into the garage. So what I did was I emptied the truck and threw all these boxes down the stairs, clodding the stairs with empty boxes. So, bye-bye, I'm out of here. See ya. No, and I said, no, I won't see you. And I left that job and I got something else, I think. But that was... And I laughed at it, by the way, of course.
Well, I'm going to consult my notes a little here. I do have some
All right.
notes in terms of what we want to talk about next. All right, so we're going to go back to the 70s now. I know that you started writing books in the 70s, but you did it as a character named, what is it, Casey Weiner?
Oh, Weiser. Casey Weiser.
Weyser.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because he was a wise guy, but I wanted to not just wise. And actually, I got him into Herb Cain's column a couple times because I became a friend of Herb Cain's, and I was in his column, I don't know, at least 60 times, including 5 of his Christmas poems, by the way.
And for those of you who don't know, Herb Cain was a legendary columnist
In the
for
Chronicle.
San Francisco Chronicle.
Yeah.
He worked there over 50 years. It was must reading for everybody who got the Chronicle.
And he liked what I did because I sent him limericks and bluish stories. And then when I finally got into the opera, I was giving him some backstage stories about what was going on. And so that's how I got into the press.
Okay, and so tell me a little bit more about these books that you wrote as Casey Weiser.
Yeah, well, the original book was a 7-volume, kind of like my memoir, actually, but it was a roman à clef because I changed names and places. And it was done in 7 volumes because I wanted, for me, 7 is a magic number. And I wanted it to be this long, long arc over the 7 volumes of the book, which went into various aspects of my life up until then. And every 7, something or other, something happened in my life. And that's how the book came about, the first book. Yeah.
Great. All right, well, let me just consult my notes again here, see what's next. So I mentioned earlier that you had been a newspaper columnist. You were a music and drama critic for a newspaper. Right?
That's another one. When I was living in Livermore, I had moved there from San Francisco, and I got hired as I went there to teach, by the way, piano and voice and theory and harmony. And it turned out that 2 of my students, a married couple, he was on the board of directors of the Livermore Independent, and she was best friends of the editor and owner of the publisher. So, and they had not really a good music or drama critic. So they knew my history, and they said, would you like to be our music and drama critic? So I kind of fell into it, really. And that's how I became that. And that was good for a little while until something bizarre happened. I won't go into great detail, but one of the readers accused me of not being at a concert I reviewed, and it caused a big hoo-ha at the paper, and it caused some sort of distress between my parents, the parents of my students, and me, and so I just quit the paper.
Now, do you remember which concert that was?
Yes, it was a Gary Carr concert. He was a stand-up bass, a classical stand-up bass, and what happened was I had to leave the second half of the concert for something else I was doing, and so I heard the first half of the concert, but wanting to review the entire concert. He was also playing in San Jose the following day, so I went to San Jose to hear the rest of the concert, and I reviewed the rest of the concert. Unfortunately, he played a tune in San Jose that he didn't play in Livermore.
Oh, no.
And then, you lie, you didn't go to the concert.
See, all you had to do was just tell the truth.
They wouldn't believe it. They wanted to hang me, so I said, okay, I'm out of here. Goodbye.
Well, that's too bad. But anyway, moving on to something else here.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we're not going to talk too much about opera because I don't know much about it, and I'm frankly not a big fan of opera, although I can appreciate it. I do know that you have had a lot of experience in opera, including being in the San Francisco Opera Chorus for 17 years.
Correct.
And so I do want to talk a little bit about a couple of your favorite stories. And let's start with, I know at one point you broke your leg, and I think you actually have a picture of you with the broken leg. I do have that picture.
And it happened during a performance of La Boheme, and the incident that occurred was Musetta. The 2 female roles in Boheme are Mimi and Musetta. Mimi is the soprano lead, and she's in love with Rodolfo, the tenor lead, and Musetta is in love with Marcello, the baritone and the mezzo lead. And in the staging I was given, in the beginning of Act 3, I was to be more or less the rival of Marcello for the attentions of Musetta. And the great Jean-Pierre Pinel, who was a great friend of mine while I was in the chorus, had me do a lot of bizarre stuff, by the way. He said, Ken, what I want you to do is come out of the back end of the Cafe Mumu, and I'm going to have Marcello give you the Italian salute, and then I just want you to fall down the stairs, get up, give him the Italian salute, and march off stage. So this one particular night, he threw me out the back door, threw me down the stairs. I fell down the stairs. It was like 3 or 4 steps is all. And at the bottom of the stairs, I heard, I thought, oh, Jesus, wow. I think I just hurt myself. So I tried to get up, and I could not move. And we're now before 3,000 people in San Francisco Opera. I thought, the show must go on. I got to get out of here. So I managed to get myself up, pull myself up, and stumble off stage left rather than stage right, rather than stage left. And I collapsed backstage, and they had to take me to the hospital. So then they put me in a cast, and I was on crutches, and I was out for several weeks. So that was one story.
So what happened with the rest of the opera and parts that you were supposed to be in? How did
they had somebody cover my role.
I see.
Somebody else did that. Yeah.
Now I do have a question. Before this happened, did you happen to say Macbeth backstage? Or...
No.
For those of you who don't know, that is like a legend of theater and opera, etc., is that you never say Macbeth backstage, or as we call it, the Scottish play.
That's right.
Or Macplay. You just don't say that. But you didn't happen to say that, did you? Because believe it or not, I was doing South Pacific at the Mountain Play, and one of the people there actually did say Macbeth, and the next day she broke her leg.
Oh my God!
So that's one of the reasons I bring it up. So
no.
Anyway, do you have any other one or two other opera stories you want to share?
My favorite story is the one I got written up in 2 magazines and 2 books about. Is when again the great Pinel had me during a performance of not Pagliacci. Cavalleria Rusticana. It was Cavalleria Rusticana. And he wanted me to be this obsessed Christian who, during the Easter pageant, was to jump off. The stage was rigged, by the way. So the stage was tilted. And I was to jump off the tilted part of the stage down to the stage level and go into Mama Lucia's cafe, get a bottle of wine, crack it on the table, rip open my shirt, scourge myself and bleed all over the place. And it got to be so real that Maestro Adler said, Ken, it's too much. We need to tone it down. So what I had to do was jump off the stage, get the bottle, break the bottle, turn around, open my shirt, and do it backward, and then fall this way so my blood was showing. And then I did the rest of the thing was to crawl across the entire stage from stage right to stage left and up the stairs to the chapel. Or I'm going,
right. Wow.
And
sounds like a lot of work.
Well, that's why Pinel loved me, because I just love doing stuff like this.
Right.
I was his major thing, yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to something else here. Let me see what's next in my notes. So in your memoir, you mentioned that you have done 5 different game shows, which is kind of remarkable.
Right.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the game shows.
The first one was, what was the first one? I was on Name That Tune twice, by the way.
Right.
I was on Face the Music. I was on Scrabble. And I was on Dating Game. That's
Oh, yeah. I think you have a pretty good story about dating.
I was Bachelor number 2.
Right.
And so she finally asked me, she said, so Bachelor number 2, I'm up on a balcony and you're down below and you're singing to me. And I want to, so sing me your serenade. It just so happened that I had just come back from Italy and had written a bunch of songs for Arcia Italiana, and one of them was called Vera of Via Veneto. So her name was Vera. So I started singing Vera of Via Veneto, and she said, thank you, next.
How long did you get through before?
Oh, well, I 3 lines maybe. So then, when it came time for Bachelor number 3, won her. So Bachelor number 1 and 2 had to go out and say hi and give her a kiss. So what happened was, I go out and I meet her, and I'm about to kiss her on the mouth, and she turned her head, and I stuck my nose in her ear, and I kissed. That was not even planned.
I believe the word awkward applies to
awkward
that.
Yeah. So that was my dating game thing. Oh, and by the way, the winning prize for that was, you're not going to believe this, a weekend in beautiful downtown San Leandro, where you live.
San Leandro.
I know.
I mean, it's a lovely place, but it's not what you would think of as a vacation destination.
Well, go figure.
Yeah.
That was 82 or so, or whatever.
I saw one game show once that they had obviously filmed it earlier, but it was after like the war in Beirut started in the late 70s, and the prize was a vacation in Beirut. So that was pretty fun. The timing was not good on that. But now, I think you actually won one of your times on Name That Tune, right?
It came very close. I was on the last, the championship round. I had beat all the other contestants, and they played a tune that, I mean, my history of music goes back to the 30s and 40s, okay? So they played a tune that sounded like something else. And I said, When My Sugar Walks Down the Street. And the tune they were playing was actually Way Down Yonder in New Orleans, which is almost the same tune. They had to stop taping and go to the music library and get the sheet music to both tunes and go, yeah, he's wrong. Out. Yes.
Wow, that's too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always amazed. You know, I love music. I listen to a lot of different kinds, but the people on Name That Tune and could name it after like 1 or 2 notes, it's amazing to me. I mean, there are a few songs I could recognize that way, but very few.
I'll give you a good one. One of the things they had me do was name this tune. We're going to play the harmony to it. And what did they play the harmony to? Jingle Bells. My tune.
Yeah, that made it pretty easy.
I didn't write Jingle Bells, but when I'm doing 4-part harmony, I can hear all 4 parts in my head at the same time.
But it's safe to say that no one has arranged Jingle Bells quite the way you have.
No, because first of all, I changed the key and I used the original version, which is not called Jingle Bells. It's called the One Horse Open Sleigh. And the chorus of that is, as the standard traditional version is, da 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 da. That is not the way Pierpont wrote it.
Oh, okay.
It's a different. Well, you know how it sings. You sing it. It's a different chord progression.
Right. And
when San Jose Symphonic Chorus did it about 5 years ago, she decided, the director decided to have the audience sing along. It didn't match at all. Especially when we got to the 5/4 verse and they were like totally lost.
But, well, the arrangement that we do in Merry Old Christmas Carolers is, shall we say, not an abridged version. In fact, after we do it, which goes on for something like, 8 minutes or something?
No, it's not that long, but go ahead.
Yeah, six and a half, something. So I always tell people you have just seen the War and Peace version.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyway, let's see. So we got through the game shows here. You also have sung on radio and TV commercials.
Oh, geez. Okay, I'll tell you one story. The first one was about, because I had a lot of a cappella groups, this company that was in San Francisco called Century 2000 or 2000 something, I forget, hired me. They knew about me from one of the agencies I worked with, and they said, Ken has all these vocal groups. So they hired me. They actually hired Chanticleer. You know Chanticleer.
Yeah.
World famous vocal orchestra that's won Grammys and all sorts of stuff. And they said, can you get Chanticleer in here to sing this commercial for whatever it was? I'll tell you, come to that later. So this is when Louis Botto was still alive, and they brought Chanticleer in to the studio on Broadway and I forget the side street. And they took one look at this music, and Louis said, we're not going to sing this. And they walked out.
Wow.
And she called me. She said, Ken, you need to get me a group in here like right now. So I called a couple of singers from the Edlows, which was one of my first a cappella groups, and that was that. Yeah. No. It was the House Jacks. It was three House Jacks and me, and we went in, and it was this stupid jingle for Levi's silver tab jeans that I won't even begin to sing, but we did it in 20 seconds. We were out of there, and that led to the next gig, which is what I want to tell you about. She called me back and she said, I need another a cappella group, but I want a woman in it because they're doing a thing that has some Gregorian chant. And this is when Gregorian chant was big. Remember that?
Right.
Those days?
Yeah.
So we go into the studio and we're singing this very simple 15-second Gregorian chant. And the soprano is just going, oh, it was like weird. So we finished that. We go home. It turns out to be the soundtrack for a Chrysler TV commercial, which ran for 2 years.
Wow.
And because I was agent for those three singers, I was getting my fee and a commission on their fees.
You made a lot on that one, I guess.
Oh, the third one. There was one more.
Yeah.
I got hired to sing as an Italian tenor, a la Pavarotti, for Folgers International Blend Coffee. It was like a 20-second da 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 da. It was like a high B, I think was all it was. So I'm singing this. We record it. I go home. The next couple of days, I was to meet a person in a bar restaurant on Union Street. So we're sitting there chatting, and they have their TV going over the bar, and we're chatting, and suddenly there's my commercial playing on their TV, and I went,
wow.
Shut up, that's me singing.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know, your various experiences with commercials reminds me of Barry Manilow. I don't know if you know about his Very Strange Medley. Have you heard of that?
I'm not sure.
So Barry, I'm a huge fan of Barry Manilow. I grew up just loving him, and he used to do this thing in concerts called the VSM, or Very Strange Medley. And it was a mix of all the commercials that he had either written or sung on over the years.
Oh, that's fun.
Really famous ones like "I Am Stuck on Band-Aids," you know, and "Don't Be Stuck in Your," "I'm a Pepper, You're a Pepper." I mean, all of these huge ones, "Like a Good Neighbor," "State Farm is there," all of that.
Is that available on YouTube?
I'm sure if you look up Barry Manilow, Very Strange Medley.
I'll definitely look that up.
Okay, let me see what's next on the agenda here. So, let's see. So, yeah, we started to talk earlier about your a cappella experiences. In fact, you are known in many circles as Mr. A Cappella.
That became an international thing, and I was like, how'd this happen?
That's great, though.
If someone had told me back in like about 1990 that I would eventually be like Mr. A Cappella around the entire world, I would say, yeah, and I got a nice bridge I want to sell you too. But because it became a thing with me for a cappella, and I started representing all these groups, more groups came my way from, I swear to God, Russia, South America, Japan, Korea, Canada, South America. And so in Prince SF Productions, I added a branch of the company called A Cappella Central, and I was booking stuff all over the place. So that's why I was able to send like Mpact and the House Jacks to Europe and Canada and Southeast Asia, and at one point down to Colombia in South America. Yeah.
Well, how did you actually come up with the name Prince SF Productions? Where does that come from?
What an interesting story that is. Back in, 1963-4, I had written the score to a show, a puppet show called Feathertop, which is a puppet show that was done at Oakland Park. What is that? Lakeshore Park in Oakland? By the lake. By
Lake Merritt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was based on a Hawthorne short story called Feathertop. And it's about a scarecrow who goes into town, charmed like a person, and wins over the town. So later on, I had a partner at that time. We were writing shows together. And he decided to take this simple little story and make a 2-act musical drama out of it called The Prince of Macaroni, and it's the same story with a very happy ending. So when it came time for me to open my company, I wanted to have the name Prince there, and that's how I became Prince SF Productions. It was that simple.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I know you represented a lot of different a cappella groups. Do you want to talk about some of your favorites? And I think you have some visual aids here as
beyond Merrie Christmas Carol, which is still
beyond Merrie
my
Christmas
baby.
Carolers, right.
That led to the Edlows because, as I said earlier, two of the guys in the Merrie Christmas Carols were also opera singers, and they were in a quartet they made up of their own called the Edlows, and that was an acronym EDLOS, which stood for Accessible Decibel Levels from Outer Space.
Oh,
and they
I never
built
knew that.
this
That's
whole stupid story about coming from the planet letter A, which is a star around one of the moons of Cappella, which is in the constellation of Auriga. So they became the bad boys of Cappella, with one P, by the way, because a cappella is spelled with two P's and two L's. So that led me to getting the House Jacks after getting the Edlows. And then the Edlows, then came my lovely guys, Mpact. They were a vocal jazz quintet. And that's the other side of the album right there. Wonderful group of singers. And I think I mentioned the Mighty Princers, did I not?
No, you haven't mentioned
I haven't. Okay. They were a group called also, you can see that? Talk of the Town. They are still but performing, and I just got a gig for them, by the way, in Pacifica. They basically sang R&B, Motown, doo-wop, jazz, and gospel. So because at that point in my career, I'd been known all around now the world for representing a cappella groups, I got a call from an agent, a promoter in Spain, who said, can you bring me, send me over a black gospel group a cappella? And I said, sure. I've got this great group called Talk of the Town. And Michael said, I can't sell a gospel group with a name like Talk of the Town. And so just on the spur of the moment, knowing that my company was called Prince SF Productions, I said, well, why don't we call them the Mighty Prince Singers? And Michael said, good, send them over. So we sent them over a couple of times.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned a couple times the House Jacks.
Yeah.
I have actually a story about how I found out about the House Jacks, and I loved them. I saw them in perform
I'll put them over my face, and you tell your story.
So I decided I was going to walk the Beta Breakers, which I'm sure most of you know what the Beta Breakers are, but if there are people watching from other parts of the country, that's a huge 7.5 mile run / walk / party with people dressed in all kinds of costumes. It's a lot of fun. And so I was walking it once, and I stopped for a little break, and I happened to stop right at where the House Jacks were singing, and they were doing an a cappella version of Elton John's Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And they were doing all of the instruments and everything else, and I was just blown away. I thought they were absolutely amazing. In fact, as luck would have it, I actually ended up getting to be in a show later with one of the guys who had been in the House Jacks for 8 years. His name was Rob. What was
Rob Penn?
Rob Penn, great guy, tremendous talent, and he was in a show with me for quite a while that was near Union Square in San Francisco.
Didn't you do 2 shows with him?
I might have been in 2 of them with me. I did a number of shows with this writer / director / producer named Merrie. And he did all of these wonderful music reviews about various subjects, including shopping, the musical, Megabytes, the musical, about
dating,
technology. Party of Two.
Party of One also.
Well, Party of One was his first big one, right? He had a great tagline for that. Musical or music review for those who are or have ever been single. So it was a great line. But Party of Two also about a relationship. But I was lucky enough to be in 5 of his shows over the years.
Cool.
And the 2 that I believe Rob was in, at least one of them, was Shopping the Musical, which you can guess what the subject was about that, and Are We Almost There, about travel.
I saw that too. Those are the 2. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, you have some pictures of the house jacks you can
I-
share. You showed the one
I
already.
showed that. Yeah.
You have. Oh, I guess that's it for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you have anything more you want to share about the house jacks?
We're still friends. We still keep in touch.
That's great.
After how many years? I signed them in 1989, I think. Then they went international. They've changed a membership a lot, but they're still going. And so is Mpact, by the way.
That's true.
No, wait a minute. The House Jacks, no, the Edlos stopped performing because they got old.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But the Jacks are still performing, and so is Mpact. And
I'm
so
going to have to try to see the house jacks again. I mean, Rob's no longer in them, right?
no,
He left
Rob's
them
now living
long.
over on the East Coast of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Married, a couple of kids, and
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it's appropriate for someone named Penn to be in Pennsylvania.
That's right. You're right.
Okay, let's see. Moving on here. So let's see. Well, you've written a number. Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
You have written a number of musicals and plays. We'll talk about a big one at the end, so we'll save Sousa for later. But do you want to talk about any of the other stuff that you've written?
Well, the first one, of course, was The Prince of Macaroni.
Right.
And then I wrote after that came, actually, the one you want to talk about was the next big one. But after that, I wrote a Halloween review called, I need to spell this out, Next to You, Next to Me. So it's NEXTE to you, NECKS to me.
Oh, cute.
It's about ghosts, vampires, ghouls, werewolves, Frankenstein's monster, mummy. I mean, it's like
basically the cornucopia of Halloween.
it's totally.
items.
And we did it in San Francisco. Had a lot of fun with it. Then I wrote Still Alive and Barely Kicking. And that's a 3-man show on the history of stand-up comedy.
Oh, wow.
Going back you're not going to believe this, going back as far as the middle 1800s in France.
Wow.
Because back then, itinerant performers, which were musicians, players, actors, comics, went from town to town, to restaurant to perform for tips.
Right.
Okay? And that became a circuit, and that became vaudeville, which is a French term, which then came to America called vaudeville.
Right.
And that became the start of stand-up comics in America. And that led to early silent movies, TV, radio, now YouTube and Instagram and everything else.
Right.
But the 3 characters in the show are called Abe, Mo, and Zig. So it's from A to Z, this history of stand-up comedy. And these guys are old purposely. Abe, the oldest guy, is 135 years old. He's seen and done everything.
Right.
Mo is 104, and Zig is 99, the kid.
Right.
And so they talk about the history of stand-up comedy, and they talk about the entire up until today. And there are some great lines in the show. And at the end of the show, I have in the printed program, there are the names of very famous comics. And it's prearranged that each of the 3 guys has memorized anecdotes not told in the body of the show. And the audience will call out the name of a person on the list, and they'll basically spontaneously ad-lib an anecdote that's already pre-rehearsed. And that goes on for another 20 minutes, and that's how that show is.
Now, that one sounds tremendous.
It's
Is there any chance you're going to have a revival of that at some point?
I don't think so.
Too bad. I would have loved to see that one.
I tried selling it nationally like I do all my stuff, and although there was interest, nobody would ever really get it. Oh, before that, I'm sorry, I totally misplaced Tapioca, which was originally called Tropicaro, and it's a 1939 throwback musical comedy based on the stupidest premise of all, where 2 guys in vaudeville, song and dance guys, are out of work and they need to find a job because they need a place to stay and some food. And they read a review in Variety that this club was looking for a male singer. And so they go on audition, and they get the job. And the owner of the club says, "Oh, we're also looking for a female singer to sing in the lounge. Do you have a female singer?" So the wise ass of the group is picking at his laundry list out of his pocket. So, "Oh, we've got the starch coats," and he's making up all these stupid names. And so he says, "I got just the perfect person for you. We'll come back in an hour, and I'll bring her." So what he has Tommy come in drag to be this female with a veil, and she gets the job. The owner, the booker of the club, falls in love with him. I mean, it gets totally stupid.
A little bit of the Dustin Hoffman movie Tootsie.
It gets even more bizarre, like a Marx Brothers thing, and it all ends very happily ever after.
Right.
The last thing I did, which we did up in Portland first, and then here in San Francisco, no, San Jose actually, is the life story, a musical biography on the life of Jacques Offenbach. And it has, of all the over 100 musical comedies he wrote, and that one grand opera, The Tales of Hoffmann, it has hit tunes from 5 of his most famous comic operas. And that's something I really need to get out there again. So that was the companion piece of the piece that you want to talk about, which is Oh, Mr. Sousa.
Right, and we'll get to that at the end. We still have a few more things. We'll save the best for last.
Okay, good.
Okay. So let's see. So I know that for a while you lived in what you call a cable car cottage, which was actually a horse-drawn car cottage from San Francisco's early days.
Yep.
And you have a picture of this.
I have 2 pictures. Yeah. Here's the first version. It was on 48th Avenue between Irving and Judah, and we painted it red and white, and then later on, it got painted yellow and white, and it's no longer there, by the way. But the rent was, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
$45 a month.
And this was what year?
1961, 62. Got written up. That's another time I got written. No, that was actually the first time I got written up in Heard's Kane's column. Right. I invited him to come out to see the cable car cottage, because at that point I had a cat and a dog named Powell and Mason, which is a major thoroughfare on the cable car line.
Right.
And he thought it was cute, so he put it in the column, and then I started sending him more stuff, and that's how the Herb Kane connection became. But yeah, that was a great place to live in.
Right. Let's see what else we got. So, I know you have a very interesting story involving a priest and a tenor, where the tenor was trying to hit the high F.
It wasn't a priest.
Well, you said something about a priest had gone into the room to say it's in God's hands.
That was later. Okay. The whole story is this. There was a tenor. I think he's now gone. Should I tell his name?
It's up to you. I don't know.
Jose Maria Suarez was his name. You can even look him up on YouTube. We were singing La Favorita, I think, was it what it was, at San Francisco Opera with Beverly Sills. And there's a line in the show where it's in the key of D flat, and this tenor decided, even though his aria went up to a D flat, that was a D flat, sort of. He decided to do, in the repeat of that, to go up to an F above high D flat, and he did it in rehearsal. And Maestro Adler said to him, "Don't sing that note. It's not in the script. I don't like interpolated notes." He said, "Don't worry, Maestro, it'll be fine." Jerk. So, opening night, I'm outside this tenor dressing room with Maestro Adler because we were discussing something, and the show hadn't even started yet. So we're talking about, and in the tenor's dressing room, the lead tenor's dressing room, is his makeup artist, his wig master, his costume designer, costume person, his dresser, by the way, and a priest. And so the priest comes out, and apparently the doctor had said he has a little, so we're taking care of that. So Adler said to the priest when he came out, "I hope God likes high notes." That was that. Well, I tell you what, you can hear it on YouTube. It's god awful, we had somebody backstage doing a hidden recording of this guy going after that note. And every time I play for somebody, they fall on the floor collapsing because it sounds, I won't even tell you what it sounds like.
But it's not in your memoir something about a cat, or does it sounds like a dying cat or something?
Well, that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
It sounds like a dog. I don't want to even go into that.
Okay.
It's not.
Perhaps a little too dirty.
It's a little too,
okay.
It's a little,
right.
You can imagine, use your imagination,
Yeah.
folks. Yeah, but that was,
great.
yeah.
All right. Well, I know that one of the groups you represented had a tremendous name called the Nuclear Whales.
Oh, God,
And
yes.
They had an instrument that there were only 12 of in the entire world.
It's like a 6.5-foot bass saxophone, yeah.
Wow.
And I used to have a picture of Donnie playing. No, he actually loaned it to President Clinton because the Whales got invited to the White House, and Clinton was a saxophone player.
Right.
And he wanted to play Donnie sax. So there was a picture of Clinton playing Donnie sax. It was very cool.
It kind of is the size of a stand-up bass, but it's a saxophone. You said 6.5 feet. That's just crazy.
And
never heard of anything
heavy as hell.
Oh,
You can see, go into YouTube and look for the Nuclear Whales, and you'll see Donnie carrying this thing around, doing their jazz stuff with dance. They did dance routines, by the way, when they were playing. Very clever group.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Let me see what else we got here. So I know that you've known all kinds of celebrities in all kinds of genres. One of the ones that was most interesting was Tony Lee Scott. So why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
Dear Tony Lee, I met her finally after hearing her name and seeing her name for a long time in my past. I was at a dinner theater in Larkspur, California, having dinner with John Neal, who produces the Harmony Sweepstakes a cappella festivals. And while we were having our dinner, I heard this singer behind me with this incredible, mellow, smoky, voluptuous sound. And I thought, I want to hear that because I'm all about singing and voice and harmony. And so I turned around and there was this woman sitting on a stool singing with the piano, like basically at a piano bar. And I went, John, I need to talk to her. So I waited till her break. I went up to her and I said, I'm so intrigued by the quality of your and the interpretation you do of a song. Who are you? And she said, well, you may have heard of me. My name is Tony Lee Scott. And I went, wait a second. Did you have a club in the Marina District called Roland's? And she said, yeah, my husband Angela and I had that, and I sang there all the time. And I can still see on the side of that wall featuring Tony Lee. I can still see it featuring Tony Lee Scott. So I said to her, what are you doing now? Why are you here? She said, well, I haven't sung in a while, and I wanted to see if I still had the pipes, and I'm just having some fun. So I said, I'm a talent agent. So I gave her my card, and I said, could you send me your promo pack? And she said, oh, sure. So I'm thinking nothing of this, right? So I go home, and a couple of days later comes this box with albums and tapes, private tapes, videos, reviews from clubs around the U.S., and people she sung with, including Tony Bennett, Jack Jones, Rod McEwen, Frank Sinatra.
Well, you have some pictures of her with celebrities as well.
Actually, these aren't singers, but I do have some preliminary yet. And I'll come to that in a second. But so she sends, so I said, would you, can you write a show for me? And we'll call it, of all these people you know, can we call the show The Men in My Life? So she said, okay. So we did the show. And I said, I want to do an album. And would that be okay? She said, well, sure, we can do that. But I don't want to call it The Men in My Life because it sounds suggestive. Can we just call it Songs of My Friends? And that's the cover of the CD right there. So while I'm representing her and getting her to do dinner theater and clubs and so forth, she's on an airplane going somewhere, and she's reading a book about the life of James Dean. And this is where you want to go.
Right.
She's reading about the life of James Dean. And in the book, there's a bit about her and her love affair with James Dean, which is all fabrication.
Oh, no.
So I said, now what? And she said, here's now what. I'm suing the book company for printing that libelous crap, and you need to come in and do a deposition on me. And I said, okay. So I go in, and I'm sitting across the table from their attorney and her attorney, and they hand me this book, and they said, you need to read this. And I said, no, I don't. And the attorney said, yeah, Ken, you do, because this is part of the deposition. So I read this junk, I closed the book, and I threw it against the wall, and I said, there. And they said, what do you have to say about that? And I said, I'll say this. Anybody who has to write crap like that needs to get a life. What she did have was a very friendly relationship with James Dean. It was not a love affair. They were very good friends because they were two lost souls in Hollywood doing their own thing. And while she was down there, she was also friends with Marlon Brando and Dennis Hopper. And shall I tell the shark story?
Sure.
Okay. Tony Lee had an accident when she was in Hollywood. And after something like 40 operations, they could not save her. I think it was her right leg. So they had to amputate the leg, and she had a phony leg made. She later on got a job singing for Bob Scobie to tour the U.S. and do Playboy clubs and all sorts of jazz clubs. And she had to tell him, without him knowing it, that he had hired a woman that had a wooden leg. So she quoted him in the dining room, and she said, Pops, I just want to tell you that I'm really appreciated the fact that you got me this gig, but you need to know that I had an accident some time ago, and I now have a wooden leg, so I wanted you to know. And Scobie said to her, honey, I hired a singer, not a dancer.
Perfect response. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So, great. All right. Let's see. We're getting pretty close to the end. I know that one of the things you were involved with was a one-man show by the person with the tremendous name of Luke Yankee. I love that
yes.
name.
Yeah, just before I came over here, I was watching a movie in which his mother, Eileen Heckert, was in. It was, what's it called? What did I say it was called? Somebody Up There Likes Me?
Right.
With Paul Newman?
About Paul Newman playing
She
the
plays
boxer, Graziano,
she
right?
plays his mother. So when I was doing representing artists, I would go to the booking conferences, and because my basic format was one-person shows or small shows or a cappella groups, this fellow was walking around looking for someone to represent his show. So he came to my booth and he said, would you be interested in representing my show? It's called Diva Dish. And I said, what's it about? He said, my mom. And I said, and who's your mom? And he said, do you remember Eileen Heckert? And I went, of course I remember Eileen Heckert. Academy Award, Golden Globe. She won 4 big things. You probably remember her for her Academy Award performance in The Bad Seed. No, she won her Academy Award for Butterflies Are Free. But she played evil Rhoda's mother in The Bad Seed and a lot of other things in her career. So Luke had written a show about his mom called Diva Dish. And it's about all the famous people he knew growing up while being the son of Eileen Heckert, who was performing on Broadway, in movies, and everybody loved her. They called her Hecky. Everybody came to Hecky's house for Christmas. They exchanged gifts. And so Luke had all these stories about famous people like Debbie Reynolds and Ethel Merman and you name it. So the book is about, the show is about her book. No, I'm sorry, the show is about her life. And then Luke wrote the book called Just Outside the Spotlight. And it's basically a long version of his show. So, that's Luke. And we're still good friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end. The last big thing we want to talk about is probably your favorite thing that you've done, or one of your favorites certainly, is a show about the great composer of marches that we all know, of Stars and Stripes, Forever, etc., etc. And his name was John Philip Sousa. So why don't you talk about your show, Oh Sousa?
Oh, Mr. Sousa.
Oh, Mr. Sousa. Okay.
It started out to be something for the Lamplighters, as a matter of fact, because I had been with the Lamplighters for a lot of years, and
And tell people who the Lamplighters are.
Oh, sure. The Lamplighters are an internationally celebrated Gilbert and Sullivan company. They do stuff other than Gilbert and Sullivan, but their primary stuff is the 14 comic operas of Gilbert and Sullivan, of which I've done chorus and leads throughout the years. And so I wanted to do a show for the Lamplighters, and I decided to do a show on the life of John Philip Sousa because he wanted to be the American Gilbert and Sullivan. Interesting story enough. And I got some John Philip Sousa CDs from Tower. And as I was playing these CDs, I was reading all the information booklets in the CDs. And I thought, geez, there's so much information that's important and interesting and fascinating. Somebody should write a show. Duh, I can write a show. So I wrote the show, and then I contacted various community orchestras and community bands, I should say. And I heard about this fellow named Les Lair, who had the California Symphony Band up in Sacramento. So I contacted him, and he became my bandmaster. And I wrote the show based on Paul Byerly's book, The Incredible Band of John Philip Sousa, John Philip Sousa's own autobiography, Marching Along, and Martin Helslip's other book called The Famous Happenings in the John Philip Sousa Band. So I had all this information, and I basically wrote the script with all this information in my head, and I swear to God, it was like sit down, pen in hand, paper on the table. Now say something. And these characters came alive and wrote the script for me. I swear to God, I wrote everything totally like taking dictation. So the show toured. I cast it with 4 singers and 4 actors, and they play all 35 parts in the show, except 2 people played John Philip Sousa throughout his entire life, and the soprano plays Jenny, his wife, throughout her entire life. The other 6 characters play all the other characters, and the show is based on a scene which leads to a famous tune that Sousa wrote. And so there's all these famous tunes throughout the entire show, and it ends with the Stars and Stripes Forever, which is our national march, by the way.
Right.
And it always got a standing ovation. And I kind of had built that in because what you never hear is the final verse sung. There are, I think, like 2 or 3 verses of the song. So when we end the show with the Stars and Stripes Forever, the audience thinks after the piccolo and the brass and the have played all the solos, it all gets combined. They think that's the end. They play that, and during that, the cast comes out, marches in, commingles, and starts waving flags and sings the final verse, and the audience went berserk. And it was an automatic standing ovation, and that's how the show ended. It was great. We toured it from 2002 to 2012. And eventually it stopped selling because all the presenters who wanted to buy it bought it, and a couple brought it back. And the rest of the presenters went into the John Philip who, what? So that it lived its life, and I was glad we did it.
Now, I know there was at least one song, maybe it was Stars and Stripes Forever. I heard this years ago, that he originally wrote as a ballad and then changed it to a march.
Oh, that was... was it not the Washington Post March? It's in the script.
Okay.
And I can't remember.
Sorry to throw you for a loop
I can't remember which march it is. But it was a love song.
Yeah.
He wrote a lot of love songs, droopy love songs that were not very popular.
Right.
And so he was in the movie. You'll see this in the movie. His wife is listening to the song, and she says, "Why don't you pep it up a little bit?" So she starts jazzing it up, and that became the march.
Now, when you say the movie, what movie are you referring to?
Oh, it's called Stars and Stripes Forever.
That's his biopic that was made.
It's a biopic that I think MGM did that even the Sousa family didn't like because they make stuff up like that to make the drama.
Sure.
It's like the sousaphone thing. How that got created is entirely different than what's in the movie. So you can, watch the movie with a grain of salt, especially since Clifton Webb plays John Philip Sousa. Wrong choice.
Do you know what year that came out?
54, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of a heyday for those
You can find it on
movies.
YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there was a quote I wanted to say earlier when I was talking about you being a Renaissance man, because this was in your memoir, and I love this.
Yeah.
One of your friends said, Kenny gets on excuse me.
Oh,
Kenny
geez.
gets on a horse and rides off in 17 directions at the same time.
Kind of.
Yeah. So,
That's when I was younger.
Yeah.
I did. I mean,
it's amazing.
I could back then. I could look at my monthly calendar and I could see every day like 3 or 4 things going on. And I'm like,
right.
I get on a horse and I don't know where I'm going sometime because I know I need to be somewhere. So my whole life has been I get on the bus and where the bus is going, that's where I'm going. I never plan anything. I didn't plan this. Len asked me to do this out of the blue. It was great, but I don't plan because things are meant to happen when they're supposed to happen. So this is happening now. And thank you, Len.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
We had a great time here and hope you enjoyed the show.
And we have one last picture for you, your last performance.
Oh, my very last.
What year was this from?
This was in 2017.
Okay.
I played King Gama in Princess Ida for Lyric Opera of San Jose. And then I was invited to do it up in Light Opera of Portland in 2019, and this is the last time I was on stage. This is basically my swan song. King Gama is a grouch who loves to be argumentative and squabble, but he's got a heart of gold. And actually, I think Gilbert wrote this based on his own life because Gilbert said in one of the books about him, his favorite thing to do in the morning was to get up and decide who he was going to have an argument with.
Oh, what a great quote. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, on that note, I want to thank you all again for watching another episode of Movies, Music, and Moving Music, today with my good friend and guest, Ken Malucelli.
Bye-bye, all.